Time to go up here!
So, Halo ODST. This is a really interesting one. It's unlike any other Halo game in that it's focused almost entirely on giving the player this moody, mysterious, atmospheric, and above all else lonely experience. I've got a lot to say about this game that I guarantee you nobody else has said, but first let's open up with a quick 1-minute summary for the uninitiated. So, in Halo, one of the Marine ranks that you sometimes fight alongside are the Orbital Drop Shock Troopers, or ODSTs. They don't get the awesome power armor, they're more or less just higher ranking standard troops. A squad of ODSTs is dropping into the African megacity New Mombasa when a slipspace rupture occurs and the entire city is more or less destroyed. 6 hours later, our character, the Rookie, wakes up and has to slowly creep along the enemy-occupied streets of New Mombasa, trying to piece together what happened to the rest of his squad through playable vignettes of what they were doing while we were unconscious. We get a little love story between two of our squad mates, and we uncover a huge secret regarding why the Covenant, our enemies, attacked Earth in the first place. When the rest of the Halo series looks something like this...
Could we possibly make any more noise? I guess so.
Going straight into this is a huge shift for the series, and it kind of shows just how much you can do with the Halo universe when you think outside of the box. I mean, we'd already seen New Mombasa in Halo 2, but it was absolutely nothing like what we have here. However, I'm not just here to sing the game's praises. If I didn't love this game, I wouldn't be talking about it. What I'm actually here to talk about is the whole Dante's Inferno thing. Some of you will have no idea what I'm talking about, others will immediately know what I'm talking about, and are about to click off the video because you've already heard all that there is to say about that. Hopefully, I've got something here to satisfy both parties, because like I said, I can more or less guarantee that I'm going to say some stuff here that nobody else has said about this game. I'll spend plenty of time getting into evidence and parallels and all of that, but for now, let's just say that it's pretty much indisputable that Halo ODST is something like a big retelling of Dante's Inferno. Therein lies the motive of this video. Rather than just explain the allegory like so many others have, I aim to tell you why that allegory is in the game in the first place. There's nothing clever or interesting about just referencing stuff without adding anything to the discussion or changing the context. People might not like it when I put it this way, but I see most religious symbolism in the media as kind of just Christianity fan service. However, Halo, a series that is filled to the brim with religious symbolism, isn't really guilty of that. All of that symbolism is there for a reason. In the first Halo, Combat Evolved, the religious symbolism was mainly there to add some mysticism to the world. It's the reason that iconic choir in the theme song fits so well, and it also makes our enemies feel more menacing. Take the Flood for instance. In this first game, they're kind of just a slightly more inventive take on zombies. But calling them the Flood, a name that's obviously a reference to Noah's Ark, helps to communicate the idea that these guys are a world-ending threat of biblical proportions. Scary stuff. In Halo 2, the religious symbolism served as motivation for the Arbiter. We, as players, already know that the Covenant is wrong about the Halo rings. They aren't some religious monument left by gods. They're weapons, and if the Covenant succeeds in activating them, then they'll inadvertently wipe out all sentient life in the galaxy. Thus, by showing us how committed the Covenant are to these factually disprovable and dangerous religious ideas, we can connect with the Arbiter when he learns the true purpose of the rings and abandons the Covenant. It was tricky to make the players want to play as one of the same aliens they were shooting at in the first game, rather than good old Master Chief, but by making the Arbiter one of the first elites to rebel against the Covenant, it was a lot easier to get the players on board. Now, Halo 3's religious symbolism is enough to fill a whole video. In fact, I already did. Check out Halo 3 Made Me Believe on my channel. This video is going to turn out to be kind of a continuation of that one, so I recommend you watch it first if you haven't already. But basically, there's about a million different things in that game that paint Master Chief as a Jesus allegory. That, in and of itself, isn't clever, but the reason they make Chief into a Jesus allegory is. It's because in Halo 3, Master Chief is just that badass. Making all of these comparisons to a literal deity really helps communicate the core idea of Halo 3, that Master Chief is a hero of mythical proportions. Future generations are going to look into the stars and think about the things that you, the player, did in this game. People are going to tell stories about it, veterans are going to get all misty-eyed about your actions in a war museum. You're going to become folklore, a legend. It fits the genuinely epic tone of Halo 3 like a glove. So what I'm trying to get across here is that throughout the Halo games, the religious symbolism was never just there for the sake of being there. It's always served a purpose, and while the Divine Comedy, or more specifically Dante's Inferno, isn't technically a religious text, it takes creative liberties from any Bible. Its allegory in Halo ODST isn't devoid of reason. So let's get started. Right off the bat, I'm sure a lot of you who haven't seen the extensive conversation covering the Dante's Inferno thing are rolling your eyes at me saying that ODST has anything to do with it. It is a distinctly self-important video essayist claim to make. Well, one, Bungie themselves have said that a lot of this game was inspired by it, and two, there's just a whole hell of a lot of evidence, the kind that really doesn't require you to reach. While again, I don't want to spend this video just explaining the allegory as others have, we should still go over some of that evidence first, so that we're all on the same page when we can get to the real meat of this video. Before even that though, a 2-sentence plot summary. A squad of ODSTs are sent to New Mombasa, but your character is separated from the rest, and after the battle was lost, has to learn what happened to his squad and link up with them, like I already said. But then, a series of audio logs are also shown to us by an AI called Virgil, expositing to us the story of a young woman named Sadie who Virgil was designed to protect, escaping New Mombasa during the Covenant invasion. That's pretty much all you need to know. I'll be referring to these audio logs as Sadie's story, and I'll be talking about them a whole hell of a lot. This is one of the only Halo games to feature audio logs, and they're super important to this game as a whole. But with that out of the way, let me convince the uninitiated that there is some weight to the Dante's Inferno thing. So first off, Virgil. Virgil is a facet of the Superintendent AI that runs New Mombasa, designed by Sadie's father to protect her during his busy days at work, and it now guides us, the player, through New Mombasa, showing us what happened to our team and the people of Mombasa, and helping us rendezvous at the end of the game. Look at how all of these street signs change with our proximity to point us in the right direction or warn us of threats.
School zone. Please, slow down.
What the hell happened here?
Final notice. Bill past due.
Grenade out!
That's Virgil at work. But anyway, in Inferno, Virgil is the name of the poet who guides Dante through the circles of hell so that he can learn to stop pitying those punished there, trust in the Lord's plan for them, and get his life back on the right path so that he too doesn't end up in hell. Huh, you know, Inferno is a really cool poem about salvation, fear, sympathy, and death, but it's kind of messed up in a modern context. I mean, right off the bat, it explains that people like Virgil are sentenced to eternity in hell, simply because they were born before Christ was, and Dante learns by the end that even those souls shouldn't be pitied, and he shouldn't be questioning the fairness of it at all. In that, we can see why, in spite of the obvious retelling of Inferno and Halo ODST, we shouldn't necessarily take the allegory too literally, and this is a position I'll be supporting through the rest of the video. I mean, if we get too literal with it, the idea that Virgil showed the rookie all of these stories of people being really, really awful over the course of Sadie's story was so that he could learn not to pity them and feel that New Mombasa deserved to be turned into glass. Yeah, I doubt it. By that logic, the Prophet of Truth, you know, the main antagonist of Halo 2 and 3, would be God in this allegory, since he sentenced the people of New Mombasa to their fate, hell on Earth. Anyways, I've had to listen to this whole thing like 5 times for this video, so let's see if we can get Sadie's story, the 50-minute long series of hidden audio logs, out of the way. Basically, Sadie starts out wanting to do a difficult, scary task, joining the UNSC, but is interrupted by the Covenant's invasion, much like Dante was interrupted by the wolf, the lion, and the leopard while trying to reach to the top of the hill in the beginning of the poem. Virgil then appears and helps Sadie talk to her dad. She finds out that he's in the level 9 laboratory underneath the Oni building in the middle of the city, and she decides to go right on into the heart of the Covenant's occupation to reach him. Over the course of her journey, she encounters situations that symbolize the 9 circles of hell described in Inferno, and the different types of sinners who are sentenced to each of them by the poem's rule. Things are a little muddy here in the beginning, and this first section seems to represent both the dark forest from the beginning of the poem, where Sadie is trying to do something scary and difficult, and limbo because she feels trapped and surrounded by monotony and wants to join the UNSC. But anyways, with Virgil's guidance, her and Dante begin crossing the river Styx and go deeper into hell.
Oh, thank you.
Virgil, go to him. Scratch that. Hell just came here.
These audio logs are literally divided into circles, so it's pretty neat and organized from here. Next up, Circle 2. Once the Covenant have landed, Sadie is taken into the back of a squad car of a corrupt police officer, Kinsler, and he gets a little handsy with her in this uncomfortable power-tripping scene. The second circle of hell. To get there, your sin would be lust. Makes sense. Sadie is saved by Kinsler's driver, Mike. Circle 3. Now on her own, having escaped Kinsler for the time being, Sadie pushes her way through a crowd of fleeing people in the old market when she encounters an 800-pound man named Jonas, who is literally blocking traffic during the evacuation so that he can offer people kebabs and to eat them himself. He's given up all hope on escaping this city, reasonably so considering his size, and just wants to die eating.
But if I run out of hope, I will still have kebabs.
I'm sure you can guess this, but the third circle of hell is dedicated to gluttony. We'll be faster from now on, now that you get the idea. Circle 4, a woman holds Sadie at gunpoint so that she can rob an ATM at a casino that's been robbing her for years. Brutes come and kill her with all the other looters. The fourth circle of hell is, of course, dedicated to the greedy. Circle 5, Kinsler comes back in a Pelican and holds Sadie and Mike at gunpoint, specifically out of anger towards her and Mike. Sadie gets Virgil to knock him out of the Pelican with a garbage truck, and then empty its load on top of him. The fifth circle is for the sin of anger. Circle 6, hiding inside of the garbage truck as it drives into the city, Sadie and Mike meet a guy who thinks he can negotiate with the Covenant and work out a deal. His willingness to essentially join the enemy fits pretty nicely into the sin of heresy, which the sixth circle is dedicated to. Circle 7, Virgil is shut down, so Mike and Sadie go into the police department where they find that an ex-employee has gone postal and killed many of his former co-workers liberated by the Covenant's invasion. He holds the two at gunpoint until a SWAT team comes in and takes him down in a firefight. The seventh circle is then dedicated to the sin of violence. Circle 8, Sadie and one of Kinsler's begrudging underlings devise a plan to lie in order to turn Virgil back on, pretending that Sadie held her at gunpoint and forced her hand. Mike then confronts the propaganda officer, who explains that he's lying about us fighting back the Covenant for the sake of the people who won't survive the invasion and need hope. And in turn, Circle 8 is dedicated to the sin of fraud. Circle 9, the final circle of hell and the end of Sadie's story. We'll take a bit more time for Circle 9. So first off, in the poem, the ninth circle of hell is described as a lake of ice. It's extremely cold there. And in our story, this is where Sadie finds out that her dad was frozen to death by the argon gas from the fire prevention system, which was tripped by Kinsler's men who were searching for him. Sadie has Virgil open up the doors of the train, which Kinsler was using to get her and himself out of the city, and the desperate refugees tear Kinsler apart out of anger that he didn't share any seats with them. The ninth circle of hell is devoted to treachery, in this case, the treachery of Kinsler. Sadie, with her father dead, is convinced by Mike and Virgil to get back on the train and leave New Mombasa for good, making her one of the few Earthling people to survive the Covenant's invasion of Earth. Sadie's story is actually really nice. It gets a little campy with the kebab guy, and the guy who shot up the police station really hams it up, but it's super enjoyable, and as I've shown here, the 9 circles of the story pretty much perfectly line up with the 9 circles of hell in Dante's Inferno. Not necessarily the punishments that the sinners face in each circle, but the sins themselves line up to a T. However, there's one last piece to Sadie's story, and it's a role that we, as the rookie, play. See, when you get to the data hive, the place where Sadie's dad was frozen by the argon gas, we traveled downward and downward into the 9th level of the laboratory with the aid of a police officer who needs to get down there too, for whatever reason.
What's wrong with you, Virgil? You trying to get me killed?
Warning, hitchhikers may be escaped convicts.
However, if you found all of the Sadie story audio logs that Virgil was trying to show you over the course of the game, he lets you into a room that the cop goes into to check on something, and we can see him confirming the death of Sadie's dad.
Wait here, watch for hostiles. I'll be back. What are you, stupid? I told you to stay outside. Step away from there. This ain't none of your business. Kinsler gave me real specific instructions. Make sure the doc's dead, and make double sure no one knows about it.
Caution, traveler, caution.
Sorry, friend. You know way too much.
Crime doesn't pay. Good citizens do their part.
Only after we kill him does Virgil let us hear the final audio log of Sadie's story, in which Sadie is convinced to escape New Mombasa with everyone else. That's a very important thing worth noting. Virgil helps Sadie through her 9 circles of hell over her story, but Virgil is also the one who guides the player through New Mombasa, hell on Earth. and Virgil is also the one who lets the player access these audio logs in the first place. See, something interesting happens in the beginning of this game, and it's super subtle. Virgil interfaces with our ODST helmet and starts doing things with our HUD. Quest markers show Virgil's face, our visor mode suddenly has the ability to see these runes left behind by the engineers, which, trust me, are relevant to Virgil, as I'll explain in a moment, and we get an outline on these seemingly mundane pieces of tech that Virgil is linked to. These outlines are what lead us to discovering the audio logs. Virgil wants the rookie, the player, to hear Sadie's story so that the rookie will understand what exactly Virgil is. So, what is Virgil if not just a human-made AI? Why does the rookie need to understand what it is? Well, all of this is explained over Sadie's story, but basically Virgil was just an AI until he was damaged in the fighting. That's when the engineers came in. The engineers are a species of essentially sentient biological supercomputers that were enslaved by the Covenant. A group of them gave their lives to free a final one from the self-destructive bomb that they've all been put on, and that final one then goes in and interfaces with the damaged Virgil, copying its data onto itself and hiding from the Covenant until the ODSTs can save it and get it out of Mombasa. So while Virgil was originally just an AI, it turns out that the machine mind that has led us through this game, given us weapons, told us stories, warned us of threats, and given us directions, and helped us link up with the rest of our squad, was in fact an alien who was on the run from the Covenant. So what's so important about Virgil? Well, as we learned in Halo 3, the reason the Covenant invaded New Mombasa in the first place is because an incredibly important Forerunner artifact was found underneath Africa, since way before humans were ever there. Virgil, and by extension Sadie's dad, discovered the Ark right around the same time that the Covenant did. Anyways, we link up with our squad, get Virgil out of New Mombasa so that he can share all sorts of Covenant info with us, and Buck and Veronica have a happy ending to their love story. New Mombasa was lost, but we got Virgil out, which means we have a major information advantage over the Covenant going forward. These ODSTs and Virgil are probably the reason that the humans ultimately won the war in Halo 3. So this is all really cool. A guy separated from his squad being led through the ashes of a destroyed megacity by an alien that has copied a man-made AI and walks us through the 9 circles of hell so that we can understand its plight and rescue it from a gigantic religious army? That's some of that classic, incredibly unique and interesting sci-fi that we all love the Halo games for, but why is it all in here? I mean, think about it, this was just a little spin-off game. It wasn't even meant to cost the full $60 until Microsoft said they had to. Yet, they did all of this audio and writing work to create Sadie's story, and perfectly lining up with Dante's Inferno. They added in all of this mystery, with the HUD itself having to be remade from the ground up to support this idea of a city and a helmet that's all being controlled by Virgil. They added multiple secret cutscenes for players who found all of the audio logs. I refuse to believe that they did all of this work, all these things that have never been done before in Halo, for a spin-off game, simply because Marty O'Donnell thought it was cool and interesting. Nope. While this is essentially just a retelling of Dante's Inferno, just with some incredibly unique and interesting sci-fi twists, there's still more to it than that. Like I said, Halo's religious symbolism has never been about just letting the player know that they've read a couple books or whatever. It's never been just that Christianity fan service. Well, we often call this game Halo ODST, but its full title is Halo 3 ODST. This is a companion piece to Halo 3 through and through, with less technical advancements towards the engine than any other Halo game. Because of that, I think it's only fair to view ODST's religious symbolism through the lens that was set up by Halo 3. Seriously, if you haven't watched my video on Halo 3, you should watch it now. In fact, I'm gonna rewatch it before I write anymore. It's just really relevant to what all I'm about to say. This video is a companion piece to that video, just as ODST is to 3 itself. So yeah, I just rewatched the video. Let me just recap that one with a couple of quick sentences. Master Chief is a Jesus allegory, and over the course of Halo 3, he cements his status as a mythical figure, not a man but a legend. And we, the player, are what elevates him in that way. In the biggest feeling game of the series, we use gigantic weapons to take down gigantic hordes of enemies and do things that should be impossible, leaving the Marines, the civilians, Lord Hood, Cortana, and everybody else to just believe the stories about Chief and have faith that he'll save us. With Master Chief's disappearance at the end of Halo 3, he unlocked the way to heaven for humanity, metaphorically speaking. In Halo ODST, which takes place just before Halo 3, we dive deep into hell.
We are dropping into hell, troopers! Time to go up here!
See, that Dante's Inferno stuff, comparing New Mombasa and the Covenant's invasion to Hell, goes deeper than just the game's retelling of the story. While Halo 3 was this gigantic game about doing absolutely insane things with massive weapons, ODST is a much quieter and darker game. A long, rainy night where you don't save anybody but yourself, interrupted only by bombastic vignettes where you try to hold on to your life in a battle that was lost before it was started. The soundtrack isn't epic, it's tragic and stirring and lonely. Ammo is scarce, enemies are better off snuck past than fought head-on, power weapons are few and far between, and need to be held on to dearly until that commitment almost gets you killed. Halo 3 was about pounding enemies into submission. Halo ODST is just about surviving with no glory. This immediately puts the gameplay in a context that's new to Halo. Even the flood levels in previous games were super fast-paced, even if they did feel lonely. They still felt like action scenes in a way that not a whole lot of stuff in Halo ODST ever does. You just claw your way through an incredibly dangerous and hopeless situation, hoping to find some light at the end of the tunnel. This, of course, extends to the world building and the story. We're constantly reminded of this whole hell on earth idea. It's graffitied onto the walls, characters are constantly saying things like, "It's hell out there," or "We're dropping into hell." The color palette, especially at the night missions, is filled with blues, yellows, reds, greens, purples, all colors that are associated with danger in the Halo series. Random snipers are stationed all over the streets of Mombasa, meaning you can be taken to one-shot health, or worse, at a moment's notice and not even see it coming. The first human that the rookie encounters after 8 hours of gameplay tries to kill you. One of only 2 times that this happens canonically in the entire series. It's dark stuff, and I'm having trouble articulating just how different it feels from every other game in the series, even if the gameplay is technically the same. For the first and only time in the series, save for Reach's ending, you are the one being hunted. Halo ODST was made as a companion piece to Halo 3, sure, but it contrasts Halo 3 in every conceivable way. So the question is, outside of just wanting to explore a new tone for the Halo series, why? Well, in my mind, it's to further challenge our faith in Master Chief, to remind us just how badly we needed a hero of mythical proportions. This is what we're up against, and this is what's going to happen to all of humanity if Master Chief doesn't come in and save us. With just how badass you are in Halo 3, it can be kind of hard to remember how powerful the Covenant is too. They destroyed one of humanity's biggest cities in a matter of minutes, when they didn't even know the humans were going to be there to fight back. Any single brute in this game can take way more abuse than you can on Legendary, and they usually have other advantages too. Better weapons, infinite ammo, and grenades. You don't even have an energy shield in this game, making it the only Halo game where that's the case. This game exists to remind us that if Master Chief didn't quote-unquote open the way to heaven for us in Halo 3, humanity would be going straight to hell. Halo 3 on its own is a story about a badass man becoming a legend. Halo 3 combined with ODST is a story about a badass man going up against the most powerful enemy imaginable, saving a species from hell, and coming out a legend. Before I close out today's video, I'd just like to take a moment to verbally thank my patrons, especially those who have been donating $10 or more monthly, such as Ada Avery, Almost Dead Again, Anatoly Volnov, Andrew Melnick, Ben N, Benny, Big Time Jim, Bobby Blitz, Celadon, Colin Gajic, Cornelius Nelson, Darius Fazier, Demise, Dennis Voshakaber, Dominic Johan, Fralum, George Rosenbaum, IJK, Kenneth Enfinger, Laffy, Mixer Rules, Neurofilter, Of Lucian, PJ, Raxvan, Robert Boateng, CeeLo, Shano, Yemenshi, Zoe, and Zyrobly. I know that it's been too long since my last upload, but well, December was just a philosophically shocking month in a lot of ways. Hopefully I'll be able to get into some of it in the next video, but for now, let's just say a lot of personal stuff happened. Nothing bad, but personal and time-consuming. But with the start of the new year, I'm hoping I can get back into a healthier workflow where I'm outputting as much as I'd like to. Anyways, thanks for watching and Happy New Year.